again, it doesn't have to take a long time. Just as a quick example of a real person I worked with. I, I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. And during the COVID years, I was doing some online classes for the cancer support community of Arizona. Although technically, because it was Zoom, anybody could join the classes if you heard about them. But we're doing we do series of classes on pain control, healing acceleration, and immune system boosting. And you get like 10, 12, 15 people in during these classes and all over Zoom. And during one of the series of classes, there was an older woman. I'm guessing she was in her 70s. And she went to the first two classes. They're about an hour long. And there's not much time with 15 people to chit chat or get to know anybody. People come to classes and then they have to go about their lives. But on the third class, I'm there, setting up the Zoom class, and she logs in a bit early, and so we're just chit chatting about life and things. And she asked me if hypnotherapy works with procrastination. I was like, yeah, that's a mindset issue. That's a belief issue that even though this thing is beneficial to you, whether it's getting your homework done or getting that report done for work or whatever the situation is, it will be beneficial to you. There's some fear around moving forward with that. It's a mindset issue. So yeah, hypnotherapy can work with that because you know why you're doing it, maybe not consciously, but unconsciously you know why you're moving away from that issue. And so we actually set up an appointment for the very next day because I had an afternoon appointment available. And what's interesting about this work, when your subconscious mind realizes you're going to be doing some healing work on a very deep level, it'll come to the conclusion, well, we can work on a problem, but why not work on the problem? And so 24 hours later, we get on a Zoom call to do this session. And she says, I know I told you I want to work on procrastination, but what I really want to work on is why I don't matter in life. This is a 70-year-old woman who thinks she's worthless and doesn't matter. It has no worth. I said, okay, yeah, we can absolutely work on that because again, that's a mindset issue, a belief issue, but it's also attached to a feeling state in the body. Because just like anxiety has a feeling state, anger has a feeling state, fear has a feeling, joy, happiness has a feeling state. Not feeling worthy has a feeling state somewhere in the body. And so in the process we're going to do, we're going to go back to the very first time you ever felt worthless, that you didn't matter in life. You know what it is, maybe not consciously, but this is what you're trying to protect yourself from. And, or you're using the feeling state of not being worthy or mattering in life to protect you from putting yourself out there in the world or whatever the situation is. You know what it is because you're doing it. You're literally changing your physiology to warn you with this feeling state. So in the deeper work we're doing during that one-on-one session, we do a regression back to the first time she ever felt it to heal that situation. 10 down to 1, I'm counting down. On 1, I want you to tell me where you are and what the situation is that made you feel you weren't worthy or you didn't matter in life. She says, I'm standing up in my crib and my father's screaming at me because I won't stop crying. Now, I don't know, standing up in your crib, that's what, maybe 12 months old, 14 months old. And if she's 70-ish years old, this was a few years ago too, but she's 70 years old, that's what, maybe the late 1950s, early 1960s, and maybe men aren't exactly trained on how to be nurturing fathers back then. Maybe dad was just not the best person in the world. But whatever the situation is, there's a baby crying in need of some help. Here's a father who's having a bad day, a bad week, a bad life, maybe just not the nicest person in the world. Mom's out of the house. He doesn't know what to do. And in his frustration and his anger and his just wanting some peace and quiet, thinks the best thing to do is just to yell louder than the baby and tell the baby to shut up. Now, in that instant, the child has to justify why this is happening. Here's this person who's supposed to protect her, love her, nurture her. And this person's screaming at her. That's terrifying for a baby, for a little child. And so the subconscious mind is trying to justify why this is happening. And in her subconscious mind, she's decided that, well, I guess the reason this is happening is I don't matter in life. The things I do don't matter. My hurt, my pain does not matter. My tears do not matter. I am worthless. Is that true? Of course, that's not true. But that's the instructions that were installed in that instant. And she held on to that for some 70 years until one day she's decided to let it go. Healing happens in an instant.
Oh, bless her heart.
And that situation healed during that session. I never saw her again. And I check up with people, and she would check up on me over the course of a year or so. So every few months, was, hey, how are you doing? How are you? Perfect. Things are great. Things are amazing. She feels so good about herself and in her life because healing happens in an instant. It maybe took her some 60, 70 years to get to that point where
Yeah.
it was time to heal and take off that uncomfortable jacket or that armor. But she healed in an instant. So she had basically like 2 or 3 generalized group sessions over topics that had nothing to do with her hurt and pain control, healing acceleration, physical pain control, healing acceleration, immune system, and then one solo session.